We will promote positive education about the nuclear family, the roles of mothers and fathers, and celebrating rather than erasing the things that make men and women different and unique.
I am liking a lot of what I'm seeing. But remember, like we talked about in the open, families, the nuclear family, men and women getting married and making babies, that is the building block of every single society. But how do we move forward? How do we get back to that? Joining me now, Abby Roth, creator of The First Generation. She's also a stay-at-home mom. Obviously, Abby's joined us many times before. Okay, Abby, obviously we don't want the government in the business of family because the government just screws up everything the government's involved in. However, it would be naive to think governments can't at least encourage people one way or the other. What do we want? What do we not want out of the government when it comes to families?
I mean, it's always so important to encourage strong families. I mean, that's the basis of civilization. It's the basis of good societies. Having a mom and a dad at home, it lowers crime rates. It means there's less anxiety in young children if you have stay-at-home moms with their children for the first 3 years. Encouraging strong families is what's going to lead to a stronger America. And so having a president being a big proponent of that and being a proponent of the differences between men and women is incredible. Should government be incredibly involved in families? No. Should government also be big proponents of families? Yes. And we should have traditional families being at the forefront of all of this, right? Because traditional families are what create strong children and create great members of society.
Abby, you mentioned the anxiety thing. I want you to talk about that a little bit more. I'm sure you didn't know we were going to go there. I didn't know we were going to go there either, but it's true. My wife's been hot on this for a while. Well, seriously, that people think, with kids, especially when they're super young, from 0 to 3, that maybe what's happening is not having a big impact because their brains are goo and they're still spreading food all over their eyes. And you think to yourself, well, I'm not even really here for anything but cleanup. But it actually has a big impact on the rest of their lives, doesn't it?
This is something that drives me a little crazy. I was at an event with a bunch of women and they were saying, it's really not important to be with your kids in those early years. Those early years, someone in a daycare can do just as much as you can. It's more important to be available in the later years. And I was sitting there thinking, you mean the most important time for a child's brain's formation, we should not be involved? It's a crazy concept. Erica Commissar's book, Being There, really goes into this whole idea that those first 3 years are when a child's brain and neural connections are developed. And as parents, it's our responsibility to give our children the best basis to be whole human beings that we can. And when mothers are present in those first 3 years, we see a way lower anxiety rate. I mean, I think the most interesting element in Erica Commissar's book that stood out to me was the idea that there are genetic kind of things that are in little babies, and those will not present if mothers are there with their children, because anxiety is what causes those to express themselves, those genetic problems to express themselves. Those anxieties are lowered when babies are with their mothers. And so those genetic things don't end up expressing. And if the child is in a daycare or is constantly separated from mom, those genetic problems will express, and that's how you have a whole anxious generation, right? Because you've got children who are not being raised by mom and dad in those early years. They're really being put in daycares from the time they're 6 weeks old, 12 weeks old, and being forced to deal with hours and hours of separation from their primary caregivers from an age that they cannot comprehend or understand what's happening to them.
Abby, you have an article out. It's a very good article in the Daily Wire talking about why women voted for Trump. I mean, everyone remembers the election we just had and the lead up to it. Every single ad was something about how women are in danger, women are going to die, women. The entire basis around the Democrat campaign was centered around women, and then women, other than the young single ones, went out and voted for Donald Trump. Why?
It honestly, I thought it was so funny, the ad campaigns. There were two ad campaigns going on. One was, you're a woman, so you have to vote for a woman. And the second thing was, your rights are on the line. And if you don't vote for Kamala Harris, then you are against women. And women are not some faceless horde that can just be driven into the ground by stupid sayings like that. We're not going to just all vote as one because you told us that we are women and so we have to vote for a woman, or because Donald Trump is Satan incarnate and so we have to vote for the other side. No, women are individuals. And so we looked at, honestly, I think our grocery bills, we looked at, the problems with the border and illegal immigration and all the crime that has resulted. We looked at our children being put in danger because of all of the policies around transgenderism. And we looked at abortion and we realized that this is a crazy notion to say that we should have abortion up until the 9th month because our daughters deserve a future. What about the daughters in our wombs? I think a lot of women were thinking, I would like my child to be born, not I would like my 4-year-old to have the right to abort their child when they're 28. Like it was all, I think, just terrible messaging. And I think women voted on the things that matter to them. And so they looked at the options, Kamala Harris, terrible candidate who happens to be a woman. And we looked at Donald Trump, who did a great job last time he was in office. And my grocery bill wasn't twice what it is now. And they voted for the person who made sense. They didn't vote for someone just because it was a meme or a punchline.
Abby, a lot of people, I just saw a recent study that was 1 in 4. That number is so shockingly high. A lot of people are talking, younger people are talking about how they don't want kids for financial reasons. Now, it's very easy for someone like you or I, already established with kids, to say that's crazy, just have them anyway. And of course, that would be my message. Go make as many babies as you can. You might even enjoy yourself. But for young people looking at the finances, right, it doesn't pencil out. Again, they are freaking expensive, those little buggers. My son's ate a dozen eggs in 2 days this weekend. What do you say to those people?
Well, I think there's, the thing I would say to people, and also the actual data on the ground. So the truth is that most people are not making fundamental decisions about their family size based on their financials. There have been a lot of economic incentives for people to have more children. And when those economic incentives come into play, there's initially a baby boom, but it peters out and it ends up balancing. And basically what it does is it encourages people to have children sooner, but it doesn't encourage them to have more children. So I don't think this argument about people having less children because of the financials and their finances is actually accurate. Most people are going to have the amount of children they would like to have because that's their value set. That's what they want. So I think the real question is, how do we convince young people that financially, that's going to, there are elements, of course, that you have to think about when it comes to the financials of having children. But I think that's what's even more important than that is instilling the values of why children are so wonderful. And not only from yes, it's going to make your life better. Yes, it's just the most incredible thing you can do as a stay-at-home mom with 2 kids who wants 5 or 6. I'm the biggest proponent of that. But it's also good for societies. I think we've been raised in a world that tells people that having children is bad for the world, right? Climate change and all these things, having babies is bad. Actually, we're in an incredible baby bust right now, which is horrible for our economies, for really a whole number of reasons. That's going to just not end up panning out well. So having children is good. Now, from the perspective of financials, I know so many people who, because they know the importance of having children, are willing to live with less. And I think that's really the hardest thing to get across to people is what you think is a fundamental necessity or baseline is actually much more than people have ever had in history. And so you don't necessarily need 2 brand new cars. You don't necessarily need to get coffee every morning from Starbucks. There are things that you don't need that you will, it will pay dividends having children, because children are so much more important than that Starbucks Frappuccino that you are craving. Having that child is going to make more sense in the long run, because even outside of the financials, right? If you don't have children and you're in your 60s, 70s, 80s, who is going to take care of you when you're older? You are going to be alone. And there is something so beautiful in the life cycle where your children, you take care of them and then they take care of you. So I could go on and on about it, but I won't.
No, I'm not going to hold you back. Starbucks isn't even very good anyway. The breakfast options are just awful. They have these little sandwiches, and there's never any sauce or anything like that with the sandwiches. I don't even like Starbucks. Abby, thank you so much. I appreciate it, as always. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.